want to play with robots? Well, it's actually quick and easy, it's convenient, you can play whenever you want for as long as you want, and it's fun. But best of all, the robots don't ever blame you for your mistakes, but if you want, you can still blame them. G'day, I'm Pete, and today I want to talk about a few tips and tricks to playing with the robots. So what we're going to cover today is I want to cover how they actually work, what sort of thinking goes on behind the scenes, understanding the descriptions that they also make. So when you're looking at the bidding, the descriptions can be a bit daunting if you don't know what to look for, so I'll cover a few tips on that. We'll look at the leads and signals and bidding decisions that they actually make, how to go about approaching those, what you need to know before you jump straight in. And then fourth, capitalizing on the mistakes. When you're playing with a robot, you want to try and minimize the mistakes they make, but you're also playing against robots, so how can you maximize the mistakes that the opponent's robots are actually going to make? So we'll cover those four things today, and let's jump into how they actually work. Well, they actually run off what's called double dummy simulations, where they imagine seeing all four hands and then run a few different simulations of what all four hands might look on based on the leads and the bidding so far and the cards they've actually seen. And then they try and work out what the best card to play from there actually is. So it's important to understand that, so when we touch back on mistakes of how they actually approach, you understand why they make the mistakes they do or why they get the things right that they actually do. Anyway, let's jump into understanding a few different descriptions of what they actually have. So when you're bidding, you might see a description pop up like this or like this. So let's just break down what you should actually be looking for in these descriptions. So the first thing that you might notice is in the top one, it says 11 to 16 high card points and 12 to 18 total points. Lots of the times there'll be two descriptions of the points there. If you ever see that just total points, it means they're taking into shortage and distributional points as well. And it's not just their, it is their total points, not just their high card points. So in that first one, there's a description of the high card points you can expect, 11 to 16 high card points, but they might have a bit more extra distribution. So that's what you can look for if there's ever those two descriptions there. If you sometimes only see one where it says total points, understand that they are taking into account distributional factors there. The second one, it's just sort of got all the different suits and what to actually look for. So the second one says there's between 3 and 5 clubs, between 3 and 5 diamonds, between 3 and 4 hearts, and 2 or less spades. The really key point there is that little minus symbol after the 2. So this one's actually trying to describe a takeout double. The key thing here is that minus sign. Sometimes you're not sure if your double is takeout or penalties. Look for the description of the suit. Sometimes it'll say 2+, in which case you're making a penalty double. Sometimes it'll say 2-. Look for if it's a minus or a plus. That'll be a good hint to whether it's a takeout double or sort of penalty interest double. So look for those minus signs and those plus signs. There are a couple of things to look for in understanding how the robot's bidding actually works. Here's another one. Another term that comes up a fair bit is the term biddable or rebiddable. What's that actually show? So rebiddable tends to suggest that you can bid and bid it again. I usually translate this into I expect 6 of the suit or more. Although if they've just bid it once, it can occasionally be 5. So this is a bit of a loose term, but rebiddable usually means 6. It can cause a bit of confusion there, but I just wanted to highlight these sorts of terms that can come up and what you should be actually expecting from them. So in general, with the descriptions, if there is like a conventional name, it'll usually pop up at the top. It'll then give you a bit of suit descriptions. Look for the plus and minus signs. And then finally, it'll give you high card points and total points or just one of them. Here it's saying there's 11 or fewer high card points. Notice here there's just the minus sign, and then with total points it's giving you 11 to 12 total points, so it's taking into account shortages and what to actually expect from that. So that's how the descriptions actually work. We'll jump into BBO and actually have a look at some of them. So how it actually plays out when you're in BBO, you can actually just cursor over the different choices and it'll give you a description pop up there about what to actually expect. So here it's got the 8 to 17 high card points, but the 9 to 19 total points. Now, obviously, I'm not going to bid one heart on this hand. I just wanted to highlight how the descriptions actually pop up. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse. It's really useful to be able to look up the different bidding meanings and see what you should do. But I see some people always feel like, oh, I have to find it, like it has to match perfectly. Don't worry about that. You can fudge the choices a little. Use this as an approximate guide. The main thing you want to be aware of is that it's not a drastically different description. Because if the description is way off, the robot will do something very strange. Whereas if it's okay, use your judgment. You don't need to follow this strict rule set. Just understand approximately what the robots are going to do. And the other key thing is the robots also fudge it as well. There are certain times that the robots will show a description and it doesn't quite match. This is just an approximate description of what you should be expecting. Don't think of it as, I have to follow this rule set. You trust your instincts, bid what you want to bid, but you have this ability to look it up and choose what you want to do. So here we'll bid 2 diamonds, Michaels, and here the robots can jump in and bid, and we can look at what the descriptions are. It's just highlighting the last one here, 3 clubs, and we can cursor over another bid to see what it says. So here 2 spades is a bit unusual. It's got constructive 4th suit. So here I've shown both majors, so they're not actually trying to show spades here. And you can see that it's got 5 plus clubs, 10 or more total points. So again, it's really useful that you can just look up the descriptions of the bids whenever you want. When making your choice, you can do it, but don't feel like it's a rule set that you have to follow. Trust your instincts. You can bend the rules a bit. The robots do as well. So use it as a guide, but don't feel like you strictly have to do that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is what sort of bidding system the robots actually use. They play 2/1, which if you've never played it before is a lot like standard. The only difference is that when you open one of a major, or your partner opens one of a major, and as responder you bid at the 2 level, that's now game forcing, rather than 10 or more points if you're playing standard. And what do you do if you're in that intermediate range playing 2/1? You just keep the bidding at the 1 level if it's in a new suit. So 1 no trump isn't 6 to 9. It's a bit of a wider range if you haven't played. If you've never played 2/1, it is quite similar to standard, so don't worry about that. Give it a shot. You can always look up the descriptions, which is quite useful. The other couple of things that I wanted to highlight in the robots bidding, which is it's important to understand how you actually support partner. So I'll bring up a new deal. So when supporting the robots with a major, the raise structure that they actually play, if you play 2 hearts, it's just a normal raise, sort of 6 to 9-ish points. If you jump to 3 hearts, this is a 4-card invitational raise, 10 to 12 total points. If you've only got a 3-card invitational raise, this is a bit tricky to find, so that's why I wanted to highlight that. What the robots actually do is they start by bidding 1 no trump, which in 2/1 is forcing for a round, and then they follow it up by jumping to 3 of a major. So they'll bid 1 no trump, and then they'll follow it up with 3 major in this case. If we had a stronger hand with 4-card support, we can bid 2 no trump, which is Jacoby. Whereas if you've got 3-card support and a game forcing, you start with a new suit, typically a 2/1 bid if you can, and then support hearts later. So I wanted to highlight them because if you've got the 3-card support, it can be a bit tricky to actually find, so I just wanted to show that. And one other bid that sometimes people miss and can cause confusion if you've never played it before is a convention called Drury, which the robots do play, which if you're a passed hand, where if it goes pass, and say we opened a heart in 3rd position, then a 2-club bid is actually a raise. So Drury works by, if you are a passed hand, your partner opens in 3rd position or 4th position. If you bid 2 clubs, that's actually a raise. I've seen people not look at the description of this and get really confused of why 2 clubs is a raise in some situations and not a raise in others. Just understand that the robots do play Drury, which means that if your partner opens a major in 3rd position or 4th position, and you bid 2 clubs as a passed hand, this may be a raise. So if you ever spot that one come up, that's why it actually works. So they're just a little bit about how the robots bidding system actually works. They play 2 over 1. If you've never played it before, it's a lot like standard. It just means that if you bid at the 2 level in response to a major, it's a game forcing hand. Keep the bidding at the 1 level if you're trying to bid a new suit, or otherwise bid a no trump if you're not game forcing in those cases. Raising partner, if you've got the 3 card support, if you're invitational, you go via a no trump and then you jump or bid 3 of a major the following turn. And if you're game forcing with 3 card support, you go via a new suit and then support later. So that's how you're meant to raise partner. If you've never done that before, I just wanted to highlight that because you won't immediately see that when looking for the descriptions of how to do those. And then finally, you want to keep an eye out for Drew. And also in the bidding, just remember you can look up the bids, but don't feel like you really have to always match the description. Trust your instincts. Follow them. Just use this as a guide. Check that it is not drastically different to what you expect, but don't worry if you're a point out or a card out here. Do what you think's right, because that's what bridge is all about. So talking about the robots' leads, we'll try and see if they get on to lead here. But what they actually do, it's important to understand their style of leads. They really, really like passive leads where they don't lead away from honors very often. It's important to understand this because you might just assume they're leading their 4th highest from their longest and strongest, whereas they actually, well, they may choose to lead that, but their preference will be to lead from sort of 3 low or 4 low rather than leading away from honors, because leading away from honors is like a high risk, high reward situation. And when they work off double dummy analysis, they see that leading away from honors can give away a trick a lot of the time. So most of the time they will try and avoid that. If they are leading their 4th best, they will lead their 4th highest card. So you can interpret their leads as 4th bests, but understand that they do try and prefer passive leads. And sometimes this will cause an issue when you lead something and you're making a more aggressive lead and your partner doesn't return it. It's because they assume that your lead style will be similar. So they're assuming lots of the times that you will be passive as well. So here I'll just open a spade and bid 2 spades. Okay, and they're on lead. All right, so here they've led Jack of Diamonds. This is almost certainly just like a singleton or doubleton diamond. They do lead top of sequences. Here we've got the 10 of diamonds, so that's not the case. So we'll open up all the cards. So here, Jack, doubleton, diamond. But if you look at their hand, they've got a very awkward lead problem. They don't want to lead away from their honors, so they thought that the diamond was the most passive. So let's bring up another hand, see how they choose in that situation as well. Okay, partner opened 3 clubs, and the opponents are working their way to 4 spades. Wow. That's an interesting hand. Anyway, we'll see what my partner leads. Now, you'd expect them to lead a top club, but if they don't actually have a sequence in clubs, they might choose something else. Again, they like try and passive leads. Here they lead the king. The robots do lead king from ace king. So with ace king, they'll lead the ace from ace king doubleton. Otherwise, they will lead the king. So here, again, another sequence lead that they've got. I was trying to show the passive leads that they like, but here it's not coming up, but you can see that they have ace king there. We'll have one more look at the types of leads that they actually make and bring up a new hand. Wow, look at this hand. This was just a random hand, but that's a lot of black cards. Wow, 7-6. I was going to try and highlight leads, but I think there's a cool hand. I'll just try and bid this one, see what I actually want to do. I really don't know what I should be bidding here. We'll start bidding spades, and I'll come back in and bid clubs. We're vol against not. Partner volunteered 4 spades. It's important here So as I mentioned, I wanted to you want to check that the description isn't really, really far from what you're doing. Use it as a guide. But here I've got 4+ clubs, twice rebiddable spades, and 25+ total points. So here, the robots haven't seen this description, this auction before, because I've never seen so many black cards. But you usually want to check to see that the description's not way, way out, because sometimes the robots might double you. But we'll pass. And partner doubled 5 diamonds, which is pretty likely. So here, I can consider, what do I want to do in this situation? Do I want to bid 5 spades? My partner didn't raise spades the first time. Is 5 diamonds going to make? We'll pass, and we'll see what my partner actually chooses to lead. But this is actually a spot where you want to use the description as a guideline, but I wanted to highlight what sort of things can happen if you just get really drastic bidding. Whenever you see something that in the description says this, I know my partner is always going to double it. So if I didn't want to be prepared for that, then I maybe shouldn't have done that. But it's a really good example hand, so we'll get in there. And it's me on lead. And here, the other thing worthy of note is the robots Q-bid first round controls. So here they've shown the ace of clubs, but it looks like East has a void club because I've got the ace of clubs. So I won't actually lead my ace trying to give my partner a ruff, but we'll just lead a spade. Okay. So here's hoping my partner has some tricks here available. I reckon they might make slam, but we'll see. It doesn't look good here. So this is a really important thing to try and understand if you want to avoid the doubles. This mistake can happen a lot. So always be careful reading the descriptions. But here, I thought a 7-6, I'm just going to get in and bid. But we probably talked them out of slam. So a nice stripe-tailed double. Let go of the club. I could have counted more. Ah, look at that. They were cold for 13. We talked them out of it. So here, they just got a quiet 750. When, if I wasn't bidding as much, they might have bid Grand Slam. So it didn't cost in the end. But as you can see, my partner's hand here, they've got not something close to a double, but they try and read into your descriptions. So I think there's a really cool hand. I wasn't planning on showing this, but I was like, wow, 7-6. That's awesome. Let's just show in this example hand. Anyway, I was talking about leads. The robots generally prefer passive leads. So if they have 1 honor or they have 3 low, they'll tend to try and lead their 3 low suit. So that's important to take into account. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the signals that the robots actually use. They play standard signals, so high encourage and natural count. So natural count is high-low is an even card. Supposedly, on the opening lead of an ace-king, they will give high encourage. Also, if they have the queen behind an ace-king, they will also play high encourage. And when following suit, they tend to play standard count. With my thoughts on the signals with robots, they're not the best signalers ever. But I find this really liberating when trying to defend, because I reckon there's so much ability in trying to defend accurately, just with all the information that isn't in signaling. So it really helps your bridge game if you don't focus too much on the signals. So while the robots do signal, I reckon it really helps you develop the other aspects of your defense when you're not strongly focusing on signaling. Also, the robots won't pay attention to a suit preference signal that you play if you're giving them a ruff. They just work off double dummy analysis, so you don't need to worry too much about that. That's a little bit about signals. They do signal high encourage and natural count, so you can rely on that if you need to, but I think it's really, really good to try and develop your other skills because they don't actually signal that much or that accurately. Try and work out what else you know about the hands. When discarding, they try and discard safely if they can't get a ruff, or if they've still got trumps, they'll try and discard from a short suit. So understanding how they try and discard is important rather than what signal they're trying to do. So all your focus isn't on signaling, but trying to develop the other things. So quick recap of leads and signals. Leads, they do lead fourths, but they really like passive leads. From ace-king, they will lead the king unless they've got ace-king doubleton. With signals, they do standard signals, but you don't need to rely too heavily on that. So the last thing I want to cover is capitalizing on mistakes that the robots can make, how to prevent your partner from making them, or how to encourage the robot opponents to actually make them. So first of all, this hand here is a perfect description of the mistakes that the robots can make. Sometimes the description of the bids will show really high total point counts, and then your partner will double it. If you are worried about that, maybe you shouldn't be making that bid. It might mean you have to make an imperfect choice there. So don't try and make a bid where the opponent, your robot, has a massive total point count if you know that they're actually going to double it, if that's what you're worried about. Other mistakes that they make is sometimes they won't continue a suit that you lead. And this comes back to the assumption of that you lead like they lead. They expect passive leads, so a lot of the time they might try and find a switch. So if you're playing in 3-no trumps and you don't have anything better to do, and the opponents have found the killing lead, sometimes it's worth ducking just to see if they switch, because they do switch at unusual situations, because they expect that the lead is very often a passive lead. So they switch more than you would expect human players to actually switch suits from. Another common mistake that they make is they don't understand that you have a guess in a suit. They work off double dummy analysis. So they assume that they run simulations of where all the cards are, and then what they think the most accurate one is, that's how they play it. So if there's a singleton king offside, they'll expect that you know that it's a singleton king, so sometimes they'll just lead a singleton king. It's a really unusual lead, but then you're like, okay, it makes sense when they think that double dummy, it says the singleton king's not going to get a trick because that's always going to fall under the ace. They don't understand that sometimes you don't know that that singleton king will fall under the ace, so you'll take a finesse. So a way to manipulate this to get extra tricks is when you're declaring, the robots will very often hop up with ace if you've got like a king-jack guess. They might hop up with honors if they assume that you'll always guess correctly. So when trying to make the guess, I then go, okay, so they haven't hopped up with an ace, so they don't have it. Like, what you try and go through is sort of like a back and forth logic of, well, they don't know I have a guess, so if they have this, they'll usually hop up with that honor. So you'll spot them hop up with honors more often than not. Use this to help yourself guess contracts. So a couple of mistakes that the robots make is sometimes they won't continue suits, so your partner might switch when you lead a suit, or when the robots are playing, they lead something. If they've found the right lead, sometimes you just duck to hope that they switch suits because they assume that is led passively. Also, they don't know you've got a guess, so you'll sometimes see your partner lead singleton honors out, like singleton kings, because they think it's never going to win a trick anyway, because they don't understand that there is actually a guess. You can use this to your information of when you have a guess and you lead up, the robots will very often fly with honors, so when they don't, you might be able to help guess more accurately in that spot. But while that's mistakes the robots make, there's certain areas where they don't make mistakes that human players would make. So they don't miscount. So the mistakes that robots make seem glaring, but there's lots of times they do things really well, and they never miscount, which you don't criticize your partner for making human errors for miscounting. And the robots are fantastic at not miscounting. So while the error rate of the robots is there, I don't think they're drastically bad at bridge, because there's errors that humans make that they never make. So I find like it's a slightly different way to play the game, but it's important to understand what mistakes they do make and what mistakes they don't make, and how to utilize that to improve your actual bridge scores. Anyway, that's all I wanted to cover today of playing with robots. So I really enjoy playing with them. Give it a shot if you haven't. There's lots of cool tournaments that you can play. Today we talked about how they actually work with their double dummy analysis, common terms in the bidding, so understanding that bidding terminology, what you should look for in that. And then we looked over their bidding structure, which is 2/1, their leads, which typically are passive, and their signals, which are standard signals. The mistakes that they make, they tend not to know that you've got a guess. They assume that they're leading passively, so they'll switch more. And finally, when looking at the descriptions, if you've got a really high total point count, you will see doubled contracts. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video on tips and tricks for playing with robots, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.